Yo, what's up, peeps and peepettes of the Headyverse? I am Spec Son, coming at you once again with another edition of Spec Reviews. To all you peeps and peepettes out there in the Headyverse and around the internet wrestling community, thank you for listening and watching Spec Reviews. This is my second volume of Spec Reviews, in which I discuss 2 to 3 DVDs in my vast collection. Last time I did 3, this time I'm going to do 2, and for the most part I'm probably going to stick with just doing 2 simply because of time constraints, and especially this time, which the first DVD that I'm going to discuss and show you guys in just a few seconds is one of the biggest DVDs I've ever seen, but it's one of the most intellectually pleasing DVDs that I've had a chance to watch and listen to. So I'm going to get down to that in just a few seconds. Right now I'm just going to show you the Mountain Dew live wire that I got right here. Awesome, good stuff. I just threw the voltage away, chugged that down right before doing this. So if you see me drink this awesome collection of liquid in between the reviews, you now know why. Just to clear up the throat a little bit, you know. But for the most part, let's get right down to the business. The first DVD is the Ric Flair interview DVD from highspots.com. And if you guys and gals haven't checked out High Spots yet, or it's been a while since you ordered some DVDs from High Spots, I highly advise you to go ahead and you do it now. High Spots is the place to be to get your wrestling DVDs. Great deals, great prices, and it's very, very much worth it. I think they've marked this one down all the way down, I believe, like $19.95 now. Maybe a little bit more money, but I think it's around $19.95 in the last sale that I saw not too long ago. This originally came out a standard retail. I guess I think I paid like $39.95 for it, which was very much worth it. Just for the content, you get 13 hours of interview time about Ric Flair here for this set. Just absolutely tremendous. And I believe Ric Flair even signed some copies as well. That I think it went like $65 or something like that. I know it was under $100. It couldn't have been much more than about $70, but it was really rare to get the autographed copy of it. Me naive, I thought I'll just get this and then get Ric Flair to sign it at FanFest in 2009, and I never was able to get him to sign it, although I got him to sign a couple more cool stuff for me. But this is very much worth the price, because it's 4 DVDs, 13 hours of content, some additional footage on top of that during this time in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Really good stuff here. And just to show you the cover, you see the cover right here, Ric Flair in his green robes, the first green robe he ever had, and also this one right here that he had around 1984-85 with the feather, with the gold feather boa, so to speak, that are attached right to the robe. Really good stuff by Olivia Walker. Just to show you the artwork here. This right here is the cover. This is the back portion of the cover case, which will also be the back cover of the case in general. As you can see, it opens up like this. I'll show you that in a minute. Really good stuff here. This is a picture of Ric Flair. Most of these pictures are from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, by the way. Great wrestling magazine to check a lot of this good stuff out in the 80s and the 70s. Ric Flair, the world's title, I believe that was his first reign as the champion, which he won in 1981 and eventually lost in 1983 to Harley Race. As I open up the flap right here, as you can see, this is Ric Flair in his white robe, and this is Ric Flair right here. Get you guys and gals to take a good look at this. This is a list of Ric Flair's championship accomplishments, specifically pertaining to the World's Heavyweight Championship, his 16-time reign, WWE, NWA, and also World Championship Wrestling. Really good stuff right there, with the picture of Ric Flair with the great 10 pounds of gold attached to him right there. I believe that was Ric Flair in his blue robe sometime after Starrcade 83. It looks like around in 1984, kind of like pictorial Ric Flair. Really good stuff here. But I'll open this up and show you an extended version of the artwork. Inside, as you can see, once again, a picture of Ric Flair in the white robe, a picture of Ric Flair from Starrcade 83 from November of 1983 when he defeated Handsome Harley Race for the world's title to claim the World's Heavyweight Championship for an outstanding second time. I'll open this up once more, and these are the DVD cases. So this is the DVD in themselves in this protective case. the 4 different case sides, as you can see right there. And all of them are really pertaining to Ric Flair and Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, which are really the best, if you ask me. Pictures of Ric Flair, detailing him in all those awesome rows. But there you go right there. Really good stuff. And I'll put the cover down back in its case, so to speak. And once again, guys and gals, if you haven't checked out highspots.com, I definitely advise you to do so, simply because High Spots is the place to be to get all of your DVDs. I mean, I've been associated with High Spots since 2004. I don't regret actually being involved in High Spots, simply because High Spots has provided me with almost 70 to 80% of my DVDs, and I get them with great sales and great prices. You're talking about a DVD set right here that went originally for an amazing $40 or so without the autograph. Is now marked down to, I believe, about $19.95. So go ahead and get that. But to make let's just break this down. I'm going to break this down into 4 different distinct categories of this DVD. It's not going to be very long because I have to discuss the second one. The second DVD I'm going to discuss as well in this volume of spec reviews. Basically, the first half of all of these DVDs describe Ric Flair's time with Jim Crockett Promotions and his biographical information in his time in AWA, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, so on and so forth. The first part, as I stated, describes his biographical information. As many of you do know, Ric Flair was a black market baby in Tennessee. I believe it was around the Nashville area. He's adopted by a family from Minnesota. His father is a prominent doctor. Ric Flair grows up in Minnesota. He attends private high school, and he also attends the University of Minnesota. He becomes a really, really good football player. Not a great, but a good football player. He's around 300 pounds. He is obsessed with bodybuilding, which is a really good precursor to him getting involved in pro wrestling. He meets a guy by the name of Ken Patera. Ken Patera, as many of you do know, famous Olympic wrestler, also wrestled for the World Wrestling Federation during the 1980s and also the 70s, former Intercontinental Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. And he was a prominent wrestler in the AWA at the time. Through that contact, Ric Flair goes to Vern Gagne's wrestling camp, I believe around 1972. And he is still around that 300-pound range. Make a long story short, after ending the camp, he was about a solid 240. He lost a whole lot of weight being in Vern Gagne's camp to be in wrestling shape for his size. He was in the same camp, I believe, as Greg Gagne, Vern's son, the Iron Sheik. I'm not sure if Ricky Steamboat was involved in the camp. He might have been. I'm not sure about that. Got to look over the DVD once more. But he was involved in this camp with all these guys. He learned various training methods by being in the camp with these guys, and he used it for the remainder of his career. Basically, the experience that he gained from that camp showed him the determination and fight you have to be in professional wrestling, especially about that time, because nothing was given to him. He wasn't getting a world championship during his first month being there. He had to work for everything he got. And basically, by being in the American Wrestling Association for as long as he was, for about a good 4 or 5 year period, Ric Flair was able to gain a whole hell of a lot of knowledge about the pro wrestling industry, a lot of knowledge that he took with him to Jim Crockett Promotions / Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling during the mid to late 70s. He's introduced as a cousin of the Andersons later on in his run with the organization, Gene and Ole Anderson. He becomes a really prominent mid-card guy in the company, facing a guy like a Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods, facing Chief Wahoo McDaniels, who Ric Flair says he has a ton of respect for, which is very, very evident in this DVD. He talks fondly about Wahoo a lot. Guys like Johnny Valentine, later World's Tag Team Champions with Greg Valentine, I believe around 1977. He also becomes the world's the NWA television champion, not the world television champion at the point. He becomes a TV champion, faces Rick Steamboat, loses the championship, makes Rick Steamboat overnight, so to speak, with the angle that he had with him, the initial angle. And he also talks about his run as the United States heavyweight champion in the late 70s, early 80s, having fused with guys like Jimmy Snuka, having fused with Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, and the list really goes on and on. Wahoo McDaniels again. He has a lot of really good feuds with a whole lot of people. Blackjack Mulligan. The list really does go on and on about what Ric Flair discussed in the first portions of this huge DVD set. But to make a long story short, Ric Flair just gives a lot of praise to a lot of the wrestlers that he worked against back in that era, working with guys like a Terry Funk, who was a world's champion at the time while Ric Flair was trying to get there. Jack Briscoe. All of these guys were huge inspirations to him, and which eventually would lead to Ric Flair getting so much notoriety that in 1981 he becomes the world's heavyweight champion. And this was, whenever that was discussed in the interview, Ric Flair is really down about his first reign because he didn't really feel like he had all the backing by all the prominent members of the National Wrestling Alliance Committee to be recognized as a real legitimate world's heavyweight champion. Even though he traveled from place to place, he didn't feel like he was drawing as much as he could, and he felt like he was kind of a no-name guy to a spectrum of fans. But one thing that he does say is that that first reign gave him the notoriety, and not initially, but eventually, to the point where he goes to Starrcade 83, wins the World's Heavyweight Championship from Harley Race, who won the belt from him. I believe it was in Kansas. I'm not sure. It was in St. Louis. It may have been the Kiel Auditorium in 1983, in the summer of 83. He loses it to Race, and then he wins it back in Greensboro, North Carolina, at the Greensboro Coliseum at Starrcade 83 in November of 1983. And he says that's when he really became Ric Flair, when he really became known as the guy from Charlotte, North Carolina, the guy who had the belt, and the reign seemed like it was finally legit. So, to make a long story short, he talks about his extreme respect that he has for the guys who helped him along the way, like a Wahoo McDaniels and Jack Briscoe. And he goes into really good detail how now he can carve his niche. He looked up to guys like a Dusty Rhodes. He looked up to Wahoo McDaniel. He looked up to Jack Briscoe, and now he's the man. He's the champion. And this doesn't go by in like a 30-minute frame. Flair talks about this for a good 3 hours. So if you're an old school fan and you really like the business for what it was back in the day, this is definitely something you should check out, because Flair discusses Jim Crockett Promotions in great detail. Now, fast forward to the later half of the DVD. He discusses his upbringing as the really top, dominant world's heavyweight champion. He talks about the Von Erichs, how it's really, really sad, that all of this stuff happened with the Von Erich family name. His great matches with Kevin. Talks about Kevin and Kerry. Discusses David Von Erich in really good detail, which is really, really important. I really like that. Said how he just had the charisma. And I've always thought if David Von Erich, and I did a Secluded Paradigm edition on this, if David Von Erich had passed away, we might be talking about David Von Erich having a 3-4 year reign as the world's heavyweight champ, because the guy had that much talent. He talks about his time in Dallas, World Class Championship wrestling there off and on. The Star Wars episode in 1982 with Kerry Von Erich, which leads to the Freebirds feud. He talks about that. And he also discusses the Four Horsemen. How the Four Horsemen came about, how important it was, how it did come from a booking office, as Tully Blanchard mentioned on the Four Horsemen DVD. And he also discusses in great, great detail Arn Anderson, his relationship with Arn Anderson, and how Arn was so influential in making that group so important based on naming the group during an interview. He just says how he loved those guys so much, how he loved the whole era, and how that's really where his character blossomed, and where he knew that I'm on the top of my game, I'm the best at what I do right now, and it's so important for me to get the guys who I'm facing over so that there can be a future in the business. Ric Flair is really keen on that. As many of us do know, Ric Flair is just great at building other people up. Secondly, I have to mention that during the middle portions of the entire DVD set, he also discusses the downfall, the rise and the downfall, a whole hell of a lot better than what the WWE did in their Rise and Fall of WCW DVD, where they just flew by it. A lot of the missing gaps that were in between about how JCP, Jim Crockett Promotions, folded